Hello, my name is Tada Yamamoto, and I am currently a student at Ohio State, but prior to coming here, I came from Westchester, Ohio, a small suburb a little bit north of Cincinnati. Many of you might be from there as well. I was one of the few people who came into Fisher knowing exactly what I wanted to do, which is major in logistics and operations. I'll primarily speak about logistics today because I think that was probably the area that I focused on the most. So why should you be a logistics major, and what would make you successful? A logistics major is going to be somebody who isn't afraid of taking on very ambiguous problems. In many cases, these problems for logistics haven't been dealt with before. And so if you're excited about solving new solutions that haven't necessarily been calculated as a whole, this is going to be an area for you. If you're excited about being able to move around the world and understand how businesses interact instead of just focusing on one silo internally, logistics could be a place for you. If you're a type of person who just isn't quite sure what you want to necessarily do in the future, I think logistics provides you an opportunity to take a look at how a company is actually run. What are the guts of what a company does from a day-to-day basis? And if that's something that you still would love to pursue as you still explore, logistics could be a great place for you. I know those were some of the reasons why I chose logistics, and I can tell you after 6 years and returning to the MBA, I fully expect to return to consulting and spend the remainder of my career in the logistics supply chain area. So upon graduation, I started with Deloitte Consulting. And consulting is a career that has been interpreted in many different ways. Specifically, what I'll be talking about is management consulting. And what I was able to do was work with my very first project was working with a laundry detergent manufacturer in combining two different manufacturing footprints. So Company A and B were merged together to form Company C. And for Company C, we had to decide which plants of Company A and B we would keep open, which we would close, and where we would need to build different capabilities within the different plants. I needed to leverage my logistics coursework that I had learned at Ohio State in order to understand what the key drivers were for the different costs and the different benefits of locating plants in different locations, as well as understanding which capabilities we would need to invest in. So for my next job, I worked for Dow Chemical in their supply chain rotation program. Again here, I leveraged a lot of my logistics knowledge that I gained from Ohio State. The first had to do with our S&OP process, which is a sales and operations planning. I was working specifically for Dow AgroSciences, which is a manufacturer of pesticides, herbicides, as well as seeds. And what we were doing was taking a look at the expected demand coming for the next 5 to 10 years and trying to make sure that we had the right plant capacity in order to meet that demand. As a business that was in a very fast growth phase, it was our responsibility to understand what the new technologies were coming in this area, as well as whether we might need to help develop our suppliers to actually help us as a large company meet those needs. So with this role, I was responsible for taking our expected demands 5 years down the road and balancing that with our expected capacities at different plants. And by taking a look at what we had currently and what we are expecting to have, we were able to make strategic decisions with specific contract manufacturers in order to make sure that we are able to truly balance supply and demand, as well as maintain the flexibility that Dow Chemical needed. This was a very unique problem because that in this case, it wasn't just about making sure we had the capacity, but making sure we are building in the correct amount of flexibility in our contracts to make sure that we weren't locked into a single location for a long period of time. This was a very unique type of experience that you'll get in supply chain that you may not actually experience in many other places because we are having to put roots in the ground in certain cases or make long-term contracts that might tie up the company in the future. And by understanding what forces are at play from a logistics perspective and how market trends were moving, this was a very exciting time for me or a very exciting project for me to work on with Dow. After some time, I decided that I wanted to get back into the consulting world. And with that, I joined Archstone Consulting, which was a more boutique and smaller consulting firm that didn't necessarily have all the resources or breadth of Deloitte that I had before with the Big Four, but allowed me to focus specifically in the supply chain and actually, in this case, sourcing and procurement side of the world. So with this opportunity, working for the German media conglomerate, I was actually able to spend about 14 months in Germany working with suppliers across a variety of countries. And one thing that I really felt was advantageous for logistics is in many cases you actually have to be there to actually set up the solutions. Whereas in other specializations, you might be working in the corporate offices and traveling from time to time in order to just work with different teams. With logistics, many of the times you actually have to be there in order to make sure your solutions are implemented and set up exactly as you need to for the local environment. You can imagine that Amazon wouldn't be able to just set up a distribution center without actually having visited there in the first place and understanding how they would be able to work with the local economy in order to ensure their operations worked effectively. And so with this, even a sourcing engagement, in many cases, we had to go meet with different locations across the company. So I was traveling to Cologne, Hamburg, in fact, even Luxembourg, in order to make sure that we were able to visit the sites, meet with the people who would be using our services, to make sure that they would be received in the way that we expected them to be received, and set up the day-to-day operations that would allow the company highest service to their people. So after a career of approximately 6 years, I've decided to come back to Fisher again as an MBA student. What I'm hoping to get now is to be able to get that next level of education. And so as I progress in my career, I might be able to move into more of a manager role and begin to manage some of the logistics and operations with which I had done some initial research and worked with in my early career. Specifically, I'll be majoring in business analytics, and while that's not specifically operations or logistics, the primary reason I wanted to now focus in this area is that, as many of you have probably learned in your classes, we're beginning to collect a significant amount of data across the board. This is especially true in logistics and operations. Measuring how, with RFID technology and GPS tracking, we're beginning to have an unprecedented amount of data. And being able to sift through this data and be able to find the key insights that are going to help us understand what the key problems that we're going to need to deal with from a logistics perspective in the future is going to be a key area that I believe I'll need to manage as I progress forward in my career. And that's the primary reason why I've chosen to come back here to Fisher to pursue an MBA within an adjacent field, but to extend my entire logistics career as a whole. So why did I choose to become part of the Logistics Association as an undergraduate at Ohio State? I primarily chose to become a part of this organization early in my freshman year because I wanted to get beyond the classroom. In many cases, I understood what my professors were talking about, and while it was good content knowledge, I didn't really always fully understand what this meant in practice. And one thing the TLA was able to do for me is bring companies to the university, and by having the companies talk specifically about what it is that they were doing and what problems they were handling, I was able to see the different concepts I had learned about in class translated into the work world. Additionally, the TLA allowed me to network with companies that were recruiting for logistics, and that specifically got what I came to the university to do: get a job. And finally, I would say that the Logistics Association is able to partner with many of the great facilities we have here local in Columbus that allows us to really see logistics in action. For example, DC5 with L Brands is one of the most advanced warehouses of the time. Being able to see all of this in action here definitely helps bring your studies alive to really understand the flexibilities that are built in to really making logistics a core competency of a company. Additionally, by being able to see other large warehouses, such as Excel's a large warehouse in the area, we're able to compare and contrast a traditional warehouse to a largely automated warehouse. And having so many here in the local Columbus area, being part of TLA really allowed you to have an opportunity to tour those sites and meet the people who are actually on the ground making logistics happen. As you begin to enter your interviews for various companies, regardless of where they are for, I think the first thing that you should ask yourself isn't necessarily what is on your resume or what are my best characteristics, but consider what the company itself is looking for. For example, if you're looking for a job as a material planner at a consumer goods company, they're probably going to want to make sure that you have specific skill sets and knowledge that would make you good for that particular role. And I think that's one area that many students don't focus enough on, thinking about what is it that their interviewer would be looking for. However, once you get into the interview room, everything completely changes, and what you should focus on most there is ensuring that you are confident in your answers. Everyone is going to buy your story if you're confident or not buy your story if you're not confident. And I think by focusing on ensuring you can deliver the right type of tone as well as story, and which is really done through practicing out loud, in my opinion, you'll be able to convey the type of messages that you really want to your interviewer. Those messages will be crafted considering the different things that you think the company is looking for. One thing is, many companies will actually tell you exactly what they're looking for, and I don't think that many students always listen during those first information sessions when those companies give you those cues. Make sure to listen for those cues and craft stories that are going to demonstrate why you are a leader, why you are a team player, why you have the ability to solve problems. And by doing that, you'll be able to effectively demonstrate that you'll be a contributing team member of their team. And if you're going to contribute, why would the company not hire you?